Classes in session here on a Thursday, and we go to the Glasser guest line and check in with Preston Guy. Give him a follow on X at PGuy77, staff writer covering LSU football at TigerBait.com. Preston, appreciate you joining us, man. Obviously, the season opener has been a big bugaboo for LSU. They've lost 5 straight season openers here in the last 5 seasons. And this year, they don't have an easy one again. They're at Clemson. We got the Battle of Death Valleys. Is the feeling among a lot of people this year, if you win that game, get that momentum, it feels like they make the playoff. If you lose that game, maybe you lose out on the playoff again. Like, just how big is that season opener against Clemson this year?
Well, playoff implications are obviously going to be big to make the playoff. There's a chance LSU's schedule is difficult enough to go 9-3 and make the playoffs, but at 10-2, you're guaranteed to go in. Well, if you lose that game, saying to go through this SEC slate with only 1 loss, that's a big ask. It's a real big ask. So the team would have to rally out a really strong performance to make the playoffs if they drop that Clemson game. I don't want to say it's over. This game feels more so like a monkey on your back for LSU fans. In fact, I polled 25 LSU media members, and I just asked them, what are your expectations for the team? What's your predicted win-loss? What do you like? What do you not like about this team? Didn't ask them anything about the schedule. More than half of them mentioned the Clemson game as being the most important game on the schedule because it has a feel, and this is going to be an interesting comparison, but it's starting to feel kind of like that Alabama losing streak that LSU went on from 2012 to 2019 where they lost 8 straight. You know, it's like, come on, we can't lose another one of this. Well, LSU's lost 5 straight openers. And, you know, every time you're looking up and it's like, all right, well, this has to be the year they snap it. But then you've got a daunting task in that game going to Clemson in the other Death Valley. It's going to be a very tough, and this, on paper, this might be the toughest matchup of the 5-game losing streak going into it. Now, 13-0 Florida State probably ended up being tougher, but I don't think people thought going into the game they were going to be a 13-0 team. So, big task. More so than anything, in Baton Rouge, there's no MLB team. You know, the Pelicans have been checked out since November. You know, now you got the baseball championship for LSU that people were focusing on, but basically since then, there's nothing going on. We sit around for 2 months talking about football, and for the fans to go through all those emotions and just get a loss on your first game, that's just killer. This whole city feels it every single time.
No question. Clemson 3.5-point favorites in that game. The total 56.5. Week 1 LSU at Clemson. And look, it's a big year for Brian Kelly. As you know, Preston, a lot of people feel like Brian Kelly's really on the hot seat, though. Like, if they miss out on the playoff again, he could be out of a job. I mean, they paid him a lot of money. He's still got a lot of years left on that contract. Let's say they go 9-3, 8-4, miss out on the playoff again. Do you think Brian Kelly is out of a job, or do you think because of how much money and years they have invested in him that they would probably keep him around for another year?
I believe if Brian Kelly goes 3-9, he will have one more year.
Wow.
Now, that's keeping his job and staying on LSU's payroll. His buyout, in my understanding, would be about $56 million as of December 31st. And I don't think LSU has the money to make that move. Could be wrong, but that's from everybody I've talked to. He's keeping his job no matter what. And particularly if he's a 8-4, 9-3 type coach, where you're good, you're just not at that next level of an elite football team that, frankly, LSU fans feel that they should have every year. You can't fire a guy like that with that kind of buyout. So here's the deal. He won't get fired by LSU, but he may get fired in the minds of public perception, which in this NIL era where, you know, fans can choose to throw their money into your program and buy players for you, that could be damning. That could be, all right, well, he's not dead, but he's got 1 foot in the grave. You know, that is the scenario we're facing. So yes, a lot of pressure from Brian Kelly, basically every form of pressure outside of will you keep your job or not.
We're talking with Preston Guy here on Send It In, staff writer covering LSU football at TigerBait.com. Preston, let's talk some Heisman Trophy. Obviously, Jaden Daniels won it a couple of years ago with his tremendous season. Nussmeier amongst the favorites to start the year. Do you think he should be the betting favorite going into this season? Obviously, the hype around Texas, the hype around Arch. He is the favorite. Nussmeier right behind him. But do you think the caliber of player, do you think that Nussmeier should be the favorite going into the season?
Yeah, I think if Arch Manning's last name was Smith, he'd probably be, 20th on the Heisman.
Yeah.
I mean, he's shown some promise and poise, don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback by any extent, but we're talking about a guy who hasn't started at the college level. I believe he has 2 starts against ULM and Mississippi State. Not exactly world beaters. Nussmeier, I like his odds as good as anybody. Cade Klubnik is definitely in that conversation. Lenore Sellers is going to be in a good position, him being a dynamic athlete. But preseason, it's fairly wide open this preseason as to who might be your Heisman favorite. And I like Nussmeier's odds as good as anybody. It certainly isn't lost to me that both Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and even if you want to go back further, Zach Mettenberger came in as transfers, had 1 season as a starter as a junior where they were okay, and then in their 5th year, they just skyrocketed in production. And looks like Nussmeier, albeit not a transfer in, he was on roster. He could be poised for a pretty big step. Frankly, as a junior, he was better than any of those guys I just named as a junior. So, he could be poised for a big step up. I'd say he needs his offensive line to keep him upright. That's going to be your big question here because he should have a lot of playmakers around him to get the ball to.
That's where I was going next, Preston. I wanted to talk to you offensive line and defensive line, probably the 2 biggest question marks for LSU going into the season. Terrific on the O-line last year. They lose 4 starters to the NFL, and then they have to replace the entire defensive line from last season too. Which is more of a question mark for you, the O-line or the D-line going into the season?
Oh, it's O-line, and it's not even particularly close. In fact, I believe LSU's strongest unit on the team is their edge rushers. Their edge rushers are nasty, and they go about 6 deep with nasty guys. Their defensive tackle, we'll see. They got a 5th-year guy, Jacobian Guillory, coming back, who's been pretty good. Tore his ACL a year ago. Sometimes you recover 100% from those. Sometimes it takes a while. We'll see. But I think, let's put it like this. I told you I polled 25 local media members. 25 of 25 mentioned offensive line as a concern.
I mean, that speaks volume right there. Obviously, got a great quarterback, great weapons. Preston, real quick in like 30 seconds, a minute or so, give us a wide receiver to keep an eye on this year. We know, obviously, year after year, LSU's got great wideouts. Who do you think is going to be the breakout guy for them this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, LSU's got a really deep receiving core. I said edge was the best on this team. I think wide receiver is the number 2 strongest unit on this team. Chris Hilton's the guy I've got my eyes on. He, of course, went to SEC Media Days. He's a guy who's been in the program now. He's a senior now. And, he's always looked good in practice and bowl games, always looked like a big, deep threat. He has a good connection with Nussmeier on his deep ball. He's been dealing with injuries the last 2 seasons. And, of course, he spent a season behind Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. He is a deep ball home run hitter. He's a guy I could see breaking out being the number 1 receiver this year. But frankly, you've got about 4 or 5 guys I wouldn't be shocked to see if they ended up being your leading receiver.
Overall, how do you expect the defense to look? 2 years ago, an absolute nightmare. Make strides under Blake Blyer in year 1. What are you expecting in year 2 out of his defense?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Blake Baker came in last year. LSU had some NIL issues where their collective were only equipped with about $5.5 million for their whole roster last year. So Blake Baker came in, they invested, got a big-name defensive coach and big-name defensive staff behind him. But it was mostly the same players from that 2023 unit, and they improved tremendously. But you have to understand, when you've got the worst defense in school history, it's not just coaching that's the problem. It's the players and the coach that's the problem. And that's exactly what happened. So this year they've invested heavily in the portal, getting guys like Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn out of Florida, A.J. Halsey. I mean, just everywhere you look, there are transfer players coming in who are going to make an impact. I believe defense is going to make tremendous strides. That was another strong theme when I talked to the local media was They're all expecting a big step up in this defense. I would be surprised if this is not a top 25 type unit this year.
Preston, before we let you go, we need a prediction out of you, my friend. Do you think LSU makes the playoff this upcoming season?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think it's a tough schedule, and I think that actually bodes in your favor because there might even be some wiggle room. There's about a 1 in 5 chance that a 9-3 SEC team makes it in. I think with a schedule like LSU's got, it's got a chance to get a big win and make a name for itself even at 9-3. I think LSU exceeds that. I think LSU's going to go 10-2. It's a good roster. Problems on offensive line. I'll be watching closely in fall camp to see which 5 starters they go at that position. But if I felt very, very, very confident about this offensive line and they started dominating, I might go 11-1 or better for this team. I think offensive line is going to be the key. But right now, 10-2.
All right, great stuff. Preston Guy, always enjoy talking LSU with him. Staff writer covering LSU at TigerBait.com. Give him a follow on X at PGuy77. Preston, appreciate the time, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, talk to you soon, guys.
Yep. All right, good stuff there for Preston. Talking a little LSU football. Let's continue in talking those Tigers down in Baton Rouge. You can look at the schedule as Preston was talking about. Folks, it is not easy. I mean, a lot of these SEC schedules are tough, right? But that week 1 game at Clemson, there is not a bigger game for any team in the sport than week 1 for LSU against Clemson. What that can do for the confidence level, Preston, I thought, made a great comparison. Obviously, they had that long losing streak against Alabama. You wondered when they would finally break that. They need to break that streak. They need to break this streak of starting the season 0-1. It puts you behind the 8 ball. And considering the schedule that they had in the SEC, what that win could do for LSU, you're likely beating the ACC champs in their place, a team that a lot of people think could have the Heisman Trophy winner in Cade Klubnik, a team that a lot of people feel like could win the national championship. You win that game on the road, week 1, it's going to be massive, massive for LSU. So a great opportunity for them and certainly a monster game to kick off the season. Then after that, you kind of get 3 games to reassess, figure out the things you did well against Clemson, figure out the things you didn't do all that well. You get 1 game against Louisiana Tech, and then you're right back at it again with Florida in week 3. Then you get Southeastern Louisiana in week 4, and then you're at Ole Miss in week 5. So this is my concern with LSU. We were just talking about it with Preston, the offensive line. They lost 4 starters from last year. Not only did they lose 4 starters, but all those guys went to the NFL. So they were really good, quality offensive linemen. And as Preston was talking about, polling all those media members, their main concern is up front. As good of a quarterback as Nussmeier is, as great as skill weapons as LSU always has, you can't do much if your quarterback isn't protected. And the fact that they're going on the road in a hostile environment in week 1, going up against that Clemson defense, I don't think bodes too well for them. And then the fact that they have to play Florida again in week 3, don't love that all that much. And then another tough road game at Ole Miss in week 5. I wish LSU had one of these schedules where it was an easy non-conference. They're playing cupcakes the first 2-3 weeks of the season, easing yourself into it. Offensive line builds some chemistry. They have their communication problems worked out. I mean, getting thrown right into the fire like that week 1 on the road at Clemson, that's going to be a tall, tall task. So I don't love that start for LSU. That'd be a tough schedule for anybody. But considering you had a team with a young offensive line, inexperienced offensive line, going to put a lot of pressure on Garrett Nussmeier to deliver in those games. With that being said, though, again, I agree with Preston. I think if Arch Manning's last name was Arch Smith, Arch Jones, he probably wouldn't be the favorite, and Garrett Nussmeier would be. Also made a great point about Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. These guys transferred into LSU. They played their junior year 1 season, look pretty good, and then obviously the senior season, it's like a complete 360 with both of those guys, and both have turned out to be pretty good NFL players. So Nussmeier did some good things last year. You can see why people are pretty excited about him going into this season. And with that start to the schedule, and probably he's going to need to pick up his offensive line and kind of elevate those guys around him. If they're able to go into Clemson, win that game, they beat a good Florida team at home, go into Oxford and beat Ole Miss, Garrett Nussmeier, we could look up heading into the month of October, and he could already be a pretty big favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. So definitely something interesting there. But then again, the rest of the schedule, right? Tough home games against South Carolina and A&M, and then he's still got road trips at Bama and at Oklahoma as well. Tough schedule for LSU. Their win total is at 8.5. The over is heavily juiced to -150. If you want to bet the under, that is +125. I'm not doing anything with the win total. I'd probably lean under, if I'm being honest with you, at the plus money. I wouldn't bet them, obviously, to make the playoff at +130 either. I wouldn't bet them to play in the SEC title game, win the SEC championship. I have my concerns about this offensive line. I have my concerns about the defensive line, too. I know Preston said these edge rushers are terrific. LSU really struggled to stop the quarterback run last year. They struggled to stop the run up the middle. It's great to have good edge pass rushers, but if team can just line up and smash you right down the middle, it's going to be tough to stop that. And even though this defense should continue to make improvements, they were, again, as Preston said, worst defense in LSU history 2 years ago. Were better last year, but still certainly not amongst the elite in the SEC. You would expect them to continue to make improvements, but I don't know if they're still going to be one of the top 5 defenses in the SEC. And with that schedule and the young offensive line that they have and all the pressure that is on Brian Kelly and company, I think they need a top 5 defense in the SEC this year if they want to make the playoffs or even go over that win total and win 9 games. So I would probably look under. Don't think it's an official bet for me. Certainly have my questions about LSU, but man, that week 1 game against Clemson, if there's a game to watch, that would probably be the one. What an opportunity for LSU. They win that game. It could really set up the rest of their season.